Welcome and good morning, everyone, to today's session. My name is George, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at TechSpace. We are cybersecurity product experts, and we use a lot of our hands-on research to power some of CodeBlue's product decisions, which are ultimately delivered to its clients. Some of you, I'm sure, are here today. Today, we're taking a fascinating dive into AI and cybersecurity and examining two sides of what is probably the same coin. How are bad actors using AI to attack organizations in New Zealand and beyond? And how can we use AI to respond? Now, today we're joined by two leaders in the space. Matthew Jose's CodeBlue CISO, where he leads cybersecurity strategy to help Kiwi organizations manage their cyber risk. Matt's got over 15 years experience across multiple IT roles, where he specializes in governance, risk and compliance, security operations, and also developing new products and services with CodeBlue. And secondly, we have Frank, who is the founder and sort of driving force, I guess, behind TechSpace's strategic direction, including our cyber SaaS research and development. Across his 20 plus year career in IT, and as an IT specialist, he's worked in-house and also built two successful IT services firms where he's consulted and advised businesses around the globe. On the right side of your window, you'll see a few tabs. There's chat, polls, and Q&A. Please send through your questions and chats throughout. We'll be sure to get to any questions you've got at the end. And keep an eye on the polls, as surely we're playing a game together, which will use that feature. So love to get your involvement there. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll bring Matt onto the stage.
Kia ora, everyone. So without further ado, let's actually get on to it. Hey, for those of you who doesn't actually know, today is Safer Internet Day here in New Zealand. And again, what is Safer Internet Day? It's basically like a global initiative. And the purpose is actually one thing, which is to create a safer space online. And I don't have to tell you this, but it's probably like the perfect day for us to run a webinar that actually focuses on cybersecurity awareness. A couple of things that we are going to cover is everyone is actually happy that we've actually got access to AI. That's the good news. Well, the bad news is attackers have access to AI as well, and they're not sitting simply. We will look into how they're actually using AI. We're also going to be discussing how CodeBlue is responding to this change, because the amount of attacks that we're actually seeing at the cold phase is too huge. And the last thing that we will also be looking into is how we can actually use AI to better protect ourselves. Cool. So how are attackers using AI, and what's our response? The first thing is actually about highly personalized phishing emails. So I'm going to give you an example that Cass kind of shared with me recently. Someone she knows was actually in the process of buying a house, and so obviously there's the buying party. There is actually the lawyer. So the lawyer actually gets an email from their client to actually settle the bank account, or all of the loans to a different bank account. Now, it actually came from the client's account. It is actually written exactly the way that the client would actually write it. But the lawyer, being the lawyer and following best practices, what they did was call up the person. And to no surprises, they had no idea that an email was actually sent. So attackers was actually kind of using AI to have real-time conversational-based phishing with the lawyer, stating that it is actually the client, and was able to kind of convince through the writing styles that it was actually them. In this specific case, the attacker was actually after money, and not all attackers are actually after money. Some would actually send you a phishing email with an attachment, and the attachment will actually contain malware. And the way they're actually kind of doing it is, again, by using AI, which is to actually kind of say they are able to kind of create malware quite fast, and being able to kind of almost do what marketing would normally do with A/B testing to actually see which one sticks and which doesn't, and so on and so forth. So what's our response? When someone is actually fighting you with guns, you can't fight them with bows and arrows. So we need AI to have AI-assisted threat detection to ensure that you are able to kind of detect these things and stop it at the tracks. The second thing is we owe it to ourselves to actually educate our people on AI literacy, what these platforms are actually capable of doing and what is actually a safer way to conduct yourself when using these platforms. AI is definitely really good, but it can also be used for creating harm. And people need to know it. And this is where training actually kind of comes in on how to properly use AI. And the last one is, with malware and delivery, you actually really need an efficient, mail filtering solution to make sure that that email that is actually coming to you by using AI-assisted threat detection is able to be stopped and not land on users' inbox. One of the things that we do at CodeBlue is we have a security operations center, and because we actually run a security operations center, we can actually pull stats about what we did last year, and that is what you're actually seeing at the moment. So for the last year, we prevented almost 217K malware attacks across our customers. We also stopped 7.3 million spam and phishing emails from reaching your inboxes. And I just want to pause there, on that, spam and phishing emails just for a second. That is how many mails that was actually malicious that hasn't reached the mailbox that people didn't actually have to think about. But also think about all the efficiency gains that has actually kind of been introduced into the business by people not looking at the emails that they shouldn't be looking at. We also kind of stopped 2.2 million or internet threats across our customers as well. One of the other privileges of running a security operations center is we get to get stats about where the industry is going or where the attack tactics are actually kind of changing. And so we handled 45 different incidents, unique incidents last year. So of those, three were actually preventing ransomware. And as you can imagine, when you're actually preventing ransomware, there is actually not just the prevention part of it, but there is actually other things that actually goes on top of it. One of the other interesting aspects is we handled 36 business email compromises. So what that means is, an employee's username and password was actually kind of compromised. And so that is what we call as a business email compromise. And what is actually interesting in last year's figures was 28 of the 36 that we handled was basically multi-factor authentication bypass. They were able to bypass conditional access and all those kind of stuff, which was once considered as gold standard. The attackers are actually changing tactics to basically circumvent the protection mechanisms that's actually being put by organizations. Cool. So many of you might actually be interested in this, which is how does an attack happen? And this is something that we handled. So we've actually kind of called it an anatomy of an attack, of how an attacker would actually kind of conduct um, an attack. So towards the left, I mean, you can only see one picture, but towards your left is the attacker. Towards the right is the user, and it actually starts usually by an attacker sending a carefully crafted email, often using AI-assisted emails to the user. Now, one of the other things I want to kind of mention is as I step through the attack chain, one of the things I would actually be also stating is what are some of the preventative mechanisms or security controls that you're going to detect to make sure that the attack doesn't actually happen. So in this case, it's obvious, which is if it is actually a bad email, it shouldn't land on the user's mailbox at all. So that actually talks about having an effective mail filtering solution in place to stop it at the tracks. Now let's actually focus on the user. So to the user, they've actually got the email. Just a bit of background about the organization. They were actually having conditional access. They had multi-factor authentication for the user. The email that is actually presented to the user has a link. What we're actually going to talk about is what are some of the things that you as an organization can actually have or to prevent an attack. So when it is having a link, one of the important things to kind of note is at the time of click, there should actually be a check on the link to actually verify that the link is not bad, right? So if the link is bad, then it shouldn't actually go to that link. You're stopping the attack from proceeding further. The second thing is we should always be training the users not to click on the link. Now, technology solutions fail all the time. And this is where the awareness piece actually kind of comes in. The user needs to need to be trained to actually kind of recognize that, hey, something is actually off about this email. I'm not going to click on the link. I'm going to, if in doubt, I'm going to use the reporting button or whatever to actually get a security operations center to actually look into the email and then come back to me with a verdict. And when it is safe to do so, you can click the link. So coming back to the attacker. So what the attacker actually did was they bypassed multi-factor authentication. They bypassed the conditional access. The attacker now has access to the email account of the person. And what they do is, when an attack actually happens, there is always digital trail or what we call as the logs. So this is where organization can actually have basically not preventative controls because the account is already taken over, but rather detection and response mechanisms or detect and respond controls in place to first detect that, hey, something unusual is actually happening on the logs, and being able to stop the attacker without causing much damage. Cool. So in this case, we're still on the attacker. Once they gained access to the account, what they did was they did not actually act straight away. What they did was they spent the next 20 days, spending time on the victim's email address, and then learning how they write email, what are they conversing about, and doing their recon activities. Now, I would like to also kind of point out that not all attackers behave the same way. It is attackers dependent. Some would actually kind of launch an attack straight away within usually 10, 15 minutes. Some would actually wait for a week. Some would actually wait for days. But in this specific case, they waited 20 days. And what they did was they kind of profiled the key customers of the person, of the organization. And then they sent a carefully crafted email to all of the client organizations. One such client was actually a very large organization, and they had security controls to detect that if there is a email that is actually coming in which is suspicious, they stopped it. They kind of called the organization to find if they knew anything. I mean, they didn't know anything. So what they did was they reported the organization as unsafe to New Zealand police. And the other thing that they did was they refused to do business with the organization until such time that the organization could actually prove what happened, and most importantly, what they're actually doing to prevent attacks like this from happening again. So I hope that actually gives you a picture of how an attack actually unfolds, how attackers are actually using AI, and the impact that it could actually have on your organization if it happens. So that brings us to the end of my section. If you have any questions, please pop it on to the Q&A chat. And I'm now going to hand over it to Frank. Off to you, Frank.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Much appreciated. So, hey everyone, good morning. I hope you're doing well. And I'd like to kick my part off by having just a little bit of fun with you all. If you look in the right side of your interface, you should see a little button that says polls. And there are 3 different polls there. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one together and see if we can identify and spot which is the legitimate safe email and which is the dangerous email. So let's kick off, right, and see what that looks like. We'll start with the first one, which is the banking fact or fiction. And you can see up on the screen that there are 2 different emails that are on the screen. So just click left or right. Take a few seconds to vote in the poll. Which one do you think is the dangerous one? And which, that's all you need to select. I can see that the votes are coming in quite quickly. And let's give it a little bit longer, right, to allow people a little bit of time to digest and decide which one they think is dangerous and which one they think is safe. So which is the attack email? That's the question, left or right? That's really interesting watching the bar go up and down. Look, at this point, we've got enough votes to say that we've got a leader, which is the left one is the dangerous one. So let's have a look and proceed to see where we're at. Okay, so congratulations to all the people that have gone left and to all the people that have gone right. It's okay, it's not real, you're safe still. So we've got one phishing on the left and we've got one authentic. Now let's do this 2 more times, right? Let's just go through the exercise together as a team and see what we can do. So we go to the next one, and again, let us know which email is the phishing email, the dangerous one. Is it the left one or the right one? This is for trade. It's the second poll. You can see the votes coming in thick and fast. Which is the dangerous email, the left one or the right one? Okay, we'll just give it a few moments. And it's coming pretty quick, 70+ votes and counting. And I think we've got enough now to say that predominantly most people believe that it is the right one that is the dangerous one. So let's have a look and see whether you've got it right or not. And again, congrats. A lot of people have got that successfully right and they have avoided that attack. And we've got a bunch of people, 30%, that weren't quite there. And we can see how difficult it can be. And we're all in IT, right? And so we'll just do one more. And this is the third and final poll. Again, tell me, is the left one or the right one that is the dangerous email? Which one do you think is dangerous, and therefore which one is not? So, okay, just let the votes come in, left or right. A little bit more tentative now in terms of people voting. They're thinking about it a little bit harder, I can see. So just tell me which one is the dangerous one, left or right. Okay, well, look, the votes are coming in, and again, we've got a reasonably strong bias towards the right one at this point, being the dangerous one. So let's have a look and see where people stand, and we'll click. And congrats to all those people that successfully got that right. That is the dangerous one. And look, this is a really short snapshot of certain types of simulations, and attacks that are coming in from potential attackers. And these are not even the most sophisticated types of attacks, but as you can see with the audience that we've got here, it's pretty human and pretty easy to try and get things wrong. And the goal, I guess, is to try and uplift the human element here, uplift us as human beings, as how can we be more aware of identifying and avoiding not just email attacks, but attacks that might come via SMS or smishing, attacks that come via phishing, voice, via phone, via lots of different ways. And so when we look at what the modern solutions in the marketplace look like, or what they should look like and what they should bring to the table, typically the leading players have the same key elements, which is they have some type of artificial intelligence driven phishing simulation, meaning it's applying smarts that we would find very difficult to emulate as humans in terms of how we send simulated fake emails to people. Then they lay this on with active reporting. And so this is where we give your staff an ability to try and interact and alert that there might be a threat to the IT team. We have to also build the foundations and the fundamentals. How do we actually learn about these basics? You're all in IT, so you probably have all these foundations already, but that's the academy, and typically you want a really good training program that's going to deliver that. And lastly, we deliver what's called lightweight threat alerts about actual real-world threats, real in the wild, live threats that are happening right now, what they look like, and make them highly relatable to people, not just at a professional level, but at a personal level as well. So it can be a Gmail attack versus something that's work related. And so when the user engages in these core pillars of a training program, the intelligent training program uses artificial intelligence to understand all their interactions and then build a behavior risk score for each and every individual user. those behavior risk scores become that clear single measurement of risk, and they bubble up from the individual to the organization, and and also at the department level. So this is a great way to kick off a program, and I'm now going to dig a little bit deeper into how these aspects are executed, or how they could be executed. So if we think about AI-driven phishing simulations, and again, for those in the audience, if there are any non-technical people, we're simply talking about sending your staff a fake email to see, do they fall for it or do they not? And typically what a solution might do is it might send out 5 simulations as an example, and it'll send those out at different points in time, different dates to different people, different times of the day. However, what it's doing in that process is it's analyzing how did each of your staff engage with those fake emails that they received. Did they click a link? Did they enter data credentials, which would obviously be terrible? What time of day are they reading that email? What device are they reading it from? What type of email attack was it? Was it a social media attack? Was it about music? Was it about something work related? What's their title, their department, their location, their browser, etc.? And it grabs all of these different data points, as many as possible, and then starts to build an individual risk profile for every person in your organization. So now we know if we've got 2 people, Matthew and Frank, they both work in the same organization. Frank might have certain risk traits in this risk profile where we work out, hey, he's vulnerable to social media type attacks. He loves reading Facebook, and we see he reads his emails at 11 p.m. at night. Matt, on the other hand, his world is entirely finance oriented, and he's more likely to fall for a supply chain attack. Anything that's related to finance and money, that might be where he focuses. But we need to work out these 2 individuals and what their weak points are. At the same time, Frank might be very immature in terms of where he's at with cyber. So I'm at the low end of the skill spectrum, right? IT is not my day job. I've got plenty of other things to do. Whereas Matt, he's a masterclass. He's the cybersecurity expert. It's very difficult to fool him. So his skill level is quite high. And so now that we have this risk profile for each individual user, from that point onwards, we've got enough data to now use artificial intelligence to craft, curate, select, and send a simulation specific to each individual. So not the same simulation to everyone, but one that's tailored to each individual and their current risk profile. So this is a dynamic and dramatically improved way to try and test people's competency. Now, that's really not enough though. That's just the start of that journey. What we next do is we talk to the business and we say, hey, do you run any of these business applications? Are you running Adobe Acrobat? Are you running LinkedIn? You use Excel or Gmail or Zoom or Teams or Word, etc. And all the business needs to say is, they pull the lever that says, yes, we do use these applications. And if they say yes, now the solutions algorithm modifies itself to say, right, let's increase the probability of targeting those staff with simulations relating to these business applications. And that's really important because relevancy is king, right? And we want to stress test them against the applications that they're using most regularly, that they think they're comfortable with. And then we go a little bit further. For those that are technical in the room, we will create a native integration with your identity or authentication system. When you log into that computer, normally there's a system on the back end, something like Enter ID or Active Directory, etc., that authenticates and allows you to connect into your work environment. And in that process, what we're going to do is we're going to pull that staff data across, their first name, their last name, their department, their role, their location, etc. And now that we have this information, we also create your current company email signature once off. And now we can impersonate your staff. So I can pretend to be Matthew at CodeBlue, and the system will send an email out pretending to be Matthew to various different people. And that email topic can vary from all sorts of different things. And that's called an insider threat attack. This is that exact scenario that Matthew was describing, where an attacker had breached the environment. They had sat there silently. They carefully monitored and understood what everything looked like. And then they'd impersonated that internal person with an email targeted to one of the people in their supply chain, right? It looked like it was just from them. So that's called insider threat attacks or spear phishing. It's the most common way that a breach will happen. So having that type of sophistication in the attack process when we're testing people is really important. So, next we get to many organizations across the world, in New Zealand, I imagine as well, have people that are based outside of your country. You might have an offshore team in the Philippines, or you might have some people in Europe, in the UK, in Spain, in China, in Japan, etc. And so the solution's clever enough, the solutions should be clever enough to know where these people are based out of. And if they're based out of a country other than New Zealand, then it will target them with simulation and training content that is relevant to the country that they're in. And relevancy is key. So if they're based in New Zealand, then they should only get well-known New Zealand brands, right? Things that would be relevant to that user. So this happens automatically, and we've got multiple different attack types when we're sending these fake emails to those people. So this is really important. And thus far, this approach, it solves for 3 core problems that exist in the marketplace that we've seen. And we have, at TechSpace, what we do is we effectively road test or research the cybersecurity solutions. We get in the car and we actually stress test them. Do they do what they say? And for the most part, many of them have the same fundamental approach, which is, hey, here's a platform. And with this platform, you can create a program of simulations, and you'll send 1 simulation typically out per month, maybe more often if you want to have it on a more regular cadence. And it's typically the same simulation that goes to everyone. Sometimes there's a few little different ones, but there is a core problem in that, because today, if you send a simulation to me and I happen to like my colleagues, which I do, I jump onto my Teams chat or my Zoom chat and I say, hey, everyone, this is a simulation, don't click on that. And I feel good about myself for doing that. The problem is, of course, that now all of those people haven't had to be tested. They've been saved by me, which effectively gives you bad data in that testing process and in that training process. So in modern solutions, they will tailor the simulation per user at different times, which ensure that we don't have that problem. The next challenge we have, and I'm sure some of you have ever run a program like this, it doesn't matter which vendor it is, or have experienced this. If you create a really difficult simulation that's hard to detect, and we just saw some that were up on the screen earlier in the game, and we send that out to all the staff, the users that are at the lower end of the skill spectrum, IT is not their day job, which to be honest, for most people, that would be the truth. If they fall for that, how do they feel as human beings? Because this is a high human touch cybersecurity play. And they don't feel good. They feel shame, embarrassment. They say it wasn't them, it was somebody else, must have been a technical problem. And it results in disengagement. And disengagement is the death of these kinds of programs. That's the last thing you want, is your staff perceiving management and the IT team as the police, which is the exact opposite of the intent of these programs. So modern solutions will understand the user's skill level and automatically adjust the difficulty level of the emails it sends with where that person's currently at. So as they get more and more competent, the emails become more and more difficult. But if they are progressively going lower, then it will auto adjust and start to get easier and easier until it finds the equilibrium, it finds that match between them. And that's really important, right? We've got to remember, ultimately, this is a high human touch program. The last part's really for the people in IT and in management. These programs typically are heavy to administer. They can be difficult to deploy, and nobody wants that. So good modern solutions are highly automated. They take advantage and leverage artificial intelligence in a positive way to make it reasonably straightforward to deploy, to configure, to manage. And of course, if you have an organization like CodeBlue or a channel partner that you have strong trust with, then they're experts at this and can make your life easy. So these are the 3 core problems, but we're not at the end of that simulation journey yet. The last part is, how do we give staff an opportunity to report an email if they think it's dangerous? And typically most solutions, good modern solutions, will have some kind of reporting mechanism directly in the email client. So you open up the email client, whether it's Gmail, whether it's Outlook, you've got that reporting button, and if they successfully identify a fake email, the simulation, it will reward them live and interactively. It'll pat them on the back and say, congrats and well done. And that's really important. That positive behavioral reinforcement is what we're aiming for. The other thing that will happen on top of that, user feeling good, is it will update the algorithm and the risk profile for that individual. So turns out that Matt detected this, he reported it, and that all happened in less than 20 seconds. So now we know Matt isn't likely to fall for this type of financial attack. That's great. We can think about how we might target him in the future, right? And we can also update his risk profile. So this is one half of one of the big key pillars in the security awareness training program. The next part is, how do we build the fundamentals? Because it's one thing to say we're going to send all of these tests, but how are we actually growing the user's competency and awareness to identify and avoid these types of threats? Typically, again, in the market, so don't think vendor, think more structural architecture. There are 3 learning approaches. And if any of you have kids on the call, I'll use my children in an analogy that tries to make this more relatable. So imagine that I want to teach my kids math, which I do, by the way, and I'm trying to. I've got maybe 3 different approaches. The first is I can go down to a library, an amazing, incredible library, and it's got tens of thousands of books on math. And now I get to look through all of these books and try and find the right books at the right order and put them in the right sequence so that the training and books I give my kids will be effective. Okay. The problem is I don't just have 2 kids, I now have 100 in my company. And so how do I go about doing that? And so there are some strengths to that, but there are also some gaps. Another pathway is a Q&A approach. I ask my kids some math questions. Based on what they get wrong, I only train them on those areas. And that has some really good strengths, but there are also weaknesses and gaps in that, which I can speak to later if we have time. The third pathway, which is the pathway philosophically that I took for my kids and that I think good modern solutions adapt, is what's called behavioral learning with a purpose-built curriculum. And what did I actually do in real life? I looked for a great school. Okay, I did the study, I researched the schools, I looked up their ratings. Then I said, a great school is not enough. Do they have fantastic teachers? Because it's teachers that are actually passing on this training at the end of the day. And these teachers, that's not enough. What are they actually teaching my children about math? And how are they going about it? I want a curriculum that will teach my kids the foundations of mathematics. So what that means is, you now ask my kids, what is 2 plus 2? What is 4 divided by 2? What is 3 times 3? What is 16 minus 7? Any which way I try and trap up or attack my kids, they seem to get the right answer because they're armed with the foundations of mathematics. In many ways, when we think about cyber awareness and awareness training, we're trying to arm and enable your people with the core foundations that they have so that they can, without much thought, spot and be aware of the danger and avoid it, right? And ultimately what that leads to, hopefully, is no breach for the organization. So the way that we've seen this done well is through a purpose-built curriculum. Those curriculums are usually delivered in some kind of modern, easy, friendly, beautiful interface that the user can log into, and they can have that curriculum laid out in front of them. It's curated for you already. It's made up of micro training sessions, and typically you don't want to take more than 5 minutes of someone's time once or twice a month. And if you are taking their time, again, we think about the way that we would normally do that. Up pops this video. The video might be 3 or 4 minutes long. The user often clicks play on the video. They might mute the video then. They might go to do their actual work, not watch the video, and at the end, they wing the questions. And that's pretty normal, right? Because they're trying to get through this training program that they think perhaps they don't have to do. So a different way to engage them might be when they open up that 5-minute session, now we take them through these interactive mini steps where they have to mechanically engage with the interface. It keeps it interesting, it's not boring, and it builds the foundations whilst also testing, is this person learning and retaining what we're teaching them? And so we automate this curriculum for you in these modern solutions. They go through this ongoing learning journey, and we build and we layer on from the foundations to more and more complex topics that go outside of just identifying, detecting fake emails to multiple other cybersecurity areas that we should all be aware of. So it's fairly easy to get these types of programs in place when you've got the right solution there and the right partner. And all of the data and experiences that your end user has ultimately should end up in some kind of clear reporting metric. When you look at all these solutions and platforms in market, they have so many different reports, you can get lost in them, right? But you're also trying to do all these other things in your day job. So what we look for is reporting that can use artificial intelligence, grab all the metadata and aggregate it into a central key risk metric that you can rely upon at an individual department and organizational level. And that's how these solutions work. So that's it for me. I'll pause and hand back to Matt, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Frank. Hey, before I go into key takeaways and then to the Q&A, just wanted to stress on one of the things that Frank touched, which is the importance of gamification. Where I've actually seen security awareness training really implemented properly. We've actually kind of seen pockets of teams kind of competing to actually be on the leaderboard when it actually comes to you're the least risk to the company. So just wanted to say that. Cool. So what are some of the key takeaways? It shouldn't come as a surprise to you, but technical tools are really good and they can actually enforce rules. But what security awareness training is aimed to do is create a culture of shared responsibility. We want people to actually have a really healthy skepticism when it actually comes to when you're interacting with emails, and strong reporting habits as well. And these behaviors are really important if you want to bring security resilience into organizational resilience. And these days, sometimes all it actually takes for an organization to break is a cyber event or a cyber breach. The second thing that I want to mention is when staff are trained, they can actually recognize, phishing attempts, social engineering attempts that is actually aimed at them, and potential for fraud way earlier. And again, shouldn't be surprised if you can actually spot an issue, we can fix the issue fast, which means that the impact to the organization is cheaper, and the impact becomes smaller as well. Again, if you have cybersecurity insurance, or if you're actually in a regulatory environment, again, it shouldn't be a surprise to you. And not just regulatory, or regulated environments, but these days everybody expects you to actually have really good cybersecurity practices. Nobody wants their data out in the wild, or nobody wants to deal with an organization that's actually had like a cyber breach. So cybersecurity awareness training is one of those things where it is visible proof that you take security seriously, and you're not just investing on technology but on your people as well. So you're actually training them up on things. I'm gonna touch on three more things. So the next one is actually about attackers and some of the things that we actually kind of touched on earlier in the presentation, which is attackers are actually kind of changing tactics, and technology often doesn't catch up to it. So what security awareness training essentially does, and to touch on what Frank also mentioned, is you're actually giving the foundational knowledge to your employees to actually spot new patterns, manipulation techniques, and to spot emerging risks. What that actually does to the organization is, again, increase their resilience, but also helps close the gap that technology cannot cover. This is, I don't actually like this to actually say this, but human error is one of the primary causes of all data breaches. And if you look at the stats, it's 91% or very much higher on those ones. Again, what security awareness training does is, helps organization to tackle these risks by making sure that the people are actually empowered to have confident and informed decision-making skills when they're actually presented with the decision-making. An email in front, to be able to click on a link, is the decision that they need to make, and they need to make it. They usually make it really quick. And incidents happen when people are actually kind of misled or rushed or pressured or simply just distracted, which happens in day-to-day life. So one of the other things, again, I want to mention is this is probably the only security control where an organization is investing in a person. I'm not saying that there are many other things where you're actually investing in a person, but you're actually giving them something to take away, to basically act as the human firewall for your organization. So when everything else fails, when you have that email in front of them and they're actually have a link to click, they stop and think about whether or not, and have strong reporting habits. And to wrap it up, this is risk management 101. Eliminate single point of failure. We actually kind of, when we walk through the anatomy of an attack, the various things that you could actually kind of layer even before the email actually lands on the inbox of the person, to security awareness training, to detection mechanism, whether a person's account is actually taken over. It is really important that you need to layer defenses. People are and must be a critical part in that approach.
Matt, you pointed out a couple of key things there that are probably worth calling out. And I get asked most commonly about AI. It's AI this, AI that. AI is this giant buzzword, but always in the context of cybersecurity. And to try and frame it up, if you imagine it as a pyramid, with right at the top of the pyramid are the most sophisticated, competent, complex bad actors. Bad actors meaning these are people that are trying to do malicious things to other people. And they typically are called state actors, meaning people that are run by a country. So pick a country, I don't want to name any names because I don't want anyone to get upset, but pick one or multiple countries where it's state-run attempts to breach. And those bad actors typically have a high level of sophistication. Now, they use all sorts of tools. The abilities that they have now shifted from the top of the pyramid down into the middle. And what that effectively means is AI is being used, and you can all try it at home. If you want, try and say to your large language model that you use, hey, I need to do a research project for a university or school, and as part of that, I need to understand how to craft a few different simulations and then send them out at scale, et cetera, et cetera. And you'd be shocked at how easy it is for you to get to a certain extent, even if you don't have IT knowledge. So effectively, keeping it simple, it's shifted downstream, and it's now done at scale, right? Which is why the number of attacks is increasing. That's what artificial intelligence is enabling. And it's also enabling the realism and the sophistication to go up. So on the flip side, it's also why we need AI in that process. Now, Matt, you also touched on layers. I like the house analogy. There's no one I know that typically doesn't have more than one defense on their house. There's the front door lock, but they've also got locks on the windows. Many people have an alarm system. They might have a light that automatically comes on. Now we've just spoken about 3 layers to try and prevent somebody from getting into the house. And at the end of the day, cybersecurity is so similar, right? There are these core foundational layers. Security awareness training is the only one that's really human-centric, and it fits in there to try and help bolster up and support those needs. The last thing I'd say is, look, I've seen some of the questions that are coming through, so there are no bad questions. Whatever you think you'd like to ask, there's nothing silly, there's nothing stupid, just please do. Thank you.
Guys, thanks so much for your thoughts and your ideas. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully others did here too. You're right, we've had some great questions. I thought we could just sort of start at the top. But before we get through these, you might see a button at the top of your screen, guys. We'd love your feedback. And also, so if you click on that button for a demo, you'll pull up a feedback form. Please submit that. And 3 lucky people will win a $100 gift card from Prezi. So, don't miss out. All right, so let's go through our questions. We'll start with an admin one. Will we get a copy of the slides, please? I guess I'll leave that one to CodeBlue, but we're recording the session too, so if you don't get a copy of the slides, I think you'll be getting a copy of the recording, which answers a couple of other people's questions too. So keep an eye on your inboxes. Next question. Has CodeBlue seen any real AI-powered attacks recently?
Yeah, I can actually take that on. So the answer is actually yes. So the majority of the things that we're actually kind of seeing are AI-enabled emails, and we've actually got a really good email filtering solution, which is able to kind of look at the content of the email and then being able to make a determination of whether someone has actually used AI to actually create that email, and then along with other threat indicators, being able to kind of stop that in the tracks. The other one is the anatomy of the attack that I mentioned, which we've actually handled from our security operations center. So that was an AI-powered attack as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, not that there was an AI-powered attack, but for the answer. Next question: how often do we need to do SAT for staff? Maybe Frank, would you mind chiming in, and then Matt, you can give your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Look, there is the solution, and then there's everything that wraps around the solution. Okay, so why are we doing this? Do we have executive backing? Are we going to socialize this throughout the organization in a proactive way? So this all feeds into the how often, pragmatically, right? And once you understand what is the data that we're protecting, what is the risk that we have that we need to consider, right? What will happen if we have a breach? Pragmatically, you simply need to balance the availability of your staff and their everyday jobs, plus their personal lives, which is hectic and non-stop, against the importance of incrementally improving and growing their awareness of cyber attacks. So best practices typically for us, it's more about the components that sit within the SAT program. Effectively, SAT programs should be run perpetually. They should never stop, because attacks don't stop. The way in which attackers come in don't stop. The staff change out in your organization all the time. So the program should be perpetually there as an awareness and training program. It's more about how often do we send fake emails? How often do we send these, make them come in for these education pieces? And typically you just want to control that pacing carefully, usually once or twice a month. we have those type of training exercises and same simulations. If you have high-risk teams, then I would suggest perhaps you might want to increment the velocity for those high-risk teams to get them up to a certain minimum standard. But it is subjective based on the organization and where it's at.
Anything you wanted to add, Matt?
I think Frank actually captured my thoughts better than me. But just to say, our recommendation when it actually comes to sending fake emails is, go for twice a month at least, and then on the training pieces, we're actually going to training staff through a curriculum at least once a month.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you. Okay. The next question is, for the polls, what were the obvious tells which were phishing since there wasn't a 100% accuracy, please? Also, I'm not in IT, so extra info is welcome. I did get 2 of them correct. Well done. Thank you.
Matt, would you like to take it? Otherwise, I will.
Yeah, so I think you actually need to look into the actual email address that actually sent the email. So in the ANZ one, although it actually had all the banners, for example, if you look at the email address where it actually came from, it was actually not the anz.co.nz domain or com.au domain. So that's the difference, and that's how you would actually kind of, able to kind of differentiate what was actually a phishing email. I don't remember the last one, but I think the last one was actually about the New Zealand Post. Again, bad, not even New Zealand Post domain. The MITRE 10, I think the MITRE was actually kind of jumbled. So MITRE or MITER. Again, it's a tactic that attackers often use to actually kind of mimic, change one letter and trick you into thinking that you actually got the email from the right place.
Yeah, good point, Matthew. And also too, like a lot of attackers these days, correct me if I'm wrong, they actually use real emails. So they'll get genuine emails from, say, MITRE 10 sent to them, rip them down as HTML, and then make them malicious and send them to users. So it can get so hard to detect. But you did well to get 2 of them right, Sarita. Well done. All right, on to the next question. Amanda asks, can you please send out more information about starting some education within our team in this space, timeframe and costings? Amanda, of course. I think there's a button over the top of the video. There's also a button at the top of your screen. If you click that, that will sort of kick that off for you. But I'm sure we can get the CodeBlue team to reach out to you directly regardless. Okay, next question from Jared. How long does it take to materially improve the cyber awareness of an organization?
I'll take that. Pragmatically, you wait until the first 6 months before you decide to really stress test and start to hold to account the people that you've put through a training program, right? Assume in that process that you're seeing and ensuring participation. So there's this journey, and CodeBlue do this well, right? If you deploy a security awareness training program, it doesn't matter, again, what the underlying vendor is. There is a human element that applies to this that is often missing. And how have you socialized this program? How are you ensuring that, did you just give it to the IT people and say deploy and then you were hands off? Or do you have executive engagement? Are you checking to see whether people are actually doing their training? Are you supporting and are you rewarding people that do their training and are doing well? So finding ways to measure, track, and reward in a positive way will mean that you are much more likely to have a material improvement in cyber awareness, by a 6-month period, assuming everyone started at the same point at month 1. However, don't expect them to be cyber heroes at 6 months. Don't expect them to be cyber heroes at 12 months. So if you were to socialize this and you send out a socialization document internally, if you can frame it up to say, this is a journey, this is not your core day job. Our goal is to try and help you become more aware so that you can start to activate these. I cross the road, I look left, right, left again. I don't get hit by the car. I don't even think about doing that. It just happens. It's entirely organic in my head. Your staff will get there when it comes to cyber threats, like identifying that bad domain name that Matthew mentioned, and many of them will get there even at 6 months in, as long as they are actively participating.
Great answer. All right, let's continue on. So this is a question from Craig. I'm going to paraphrase for Craig because I've read the question already. Essentially, the question is, how do you have the email client, how do you have it so that when a user clicks report on an email they think is suspicious, it goes to both the I guess the security awareness training platform and your spam detection provider? Because having two buttons is confusing, which is a great question.
Yeah, so we've actually kind of solved the problem by having integration between the email service provider and the solution that we actually use for cybersecurity awareness training. So it is not two different buttons. It is the one single Microsoft button that you can actually press. And the only downside of it, Craig, is that instead of the real-time reporting that you actually kind of get right on the face, you would actually get an email back within a couple of seconds. So it's not the interactive one, but that's the price for that. The price that you actually pay for having one button. Users not getting confused and et cetera, et cetera.
And just perhaps to add on to that for Craig, you've got choice. Good solutions will integrate both ways. So if you don't want to use I agree you should only use one button. Let's not have the Microsoft and whatever that platform button is. If you choose to use the Microsoft button, it'll report both back to the security awareness training vendor platform and whatever the email security is, which might just be Defender or it might be some third party. If you choose to use the third party button, it will still report back to that email security platform, spam platform that you're running, has a native integration with that. So it's ultimately up to you.
Yeah, great question. Linda, and also the next question from Heather asks about small business. What about small business and home use? I guess can we deploy this to small business and home users? Is the question.
I mean, answer is yes. We've got small businesses like 10 people that's actually using solution. So definitely yes, and everyone should.
Yeah,
and I think just to put a caveat around that, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to home use, what you can't easily do is send those simulated emails from any platform to that home user because they're using a generic Gmail or Microsoft. And if you stop and think about it, that Gmail and Microsoft are giant players that won't allow you to, allow these emails through. You don't. There's no control mechanism over that home user. But from a learning perspective, yes, that will be there. The other thing is, and I didn't mention this, but in the philosophy of learning, when we're building the fundamentals, it's not just business focused. LinkedIn, TikTok, Strava, Slack. What else do we use? X. There's all these Instagram, Facebook. Empowering users with rapid micro learnings on applications they use in their personal life every day. For all of you that are in business on this call, imagine if you wanted to prevent people from scraping your mobile number from your LinkedIn profile. That's entirely possible, but a good portion of you wouldn't have that enabled and turned on. So learning how to do that at a personal level can be really empowering.
Yeah, good point. Okay, next question from Maria. Aside from emails, do different browsers, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Edge, affect how likely someone is to get caught in a scam? Which one of you like to take this one first?
I mean, I can give it a go. I mean, it basically depends on what your secure browsing habits are actually like. If you're used to searching in Google, for example, and then clicking on the first link that actually pops in without actually checking where it is actually kind of going, then yes, you're most likely going to fall for a scam. But hopefully you have a solution that actually prevents it from going into that bad place at the start. I mean, the browsers doesn't actually kind of make a difference. Like almost every browser is basically routing through the web page. So, depending on what your mechanism is. And that is one of the things about security awareness training as well, is it actually kind of walks you through how securely can you identify, while browsing as well. Like, you might be Googling. These days, it's probably ChatGPT. It might actually give you links. Do you know where it actually takes you? It's that inquisitiveness about knowing where you're actually going to land to, and that is actually a safe place that you're going to.
Everything that you've said, Matt, I would strongly align with, except to say it's not the browser per se, but perhaps the extensions that you might be allowed to run in that organization on that browser. Those extensions could very much be causing an increased probability of threat. It's very, very easy to compromise an extension. So just be aware of those.
Good point. Linda asks, what about protecting our senior citizens? They're really having problems.
Matt, I'll give a live example of this if you like. This one's from Australia. It's age 50 to 65. it's men more than women for whatever reason. Perhaps men go senile faster. I don't know, but statistically, this is like what the data comes back with. Are more easily compromised at a personal level, right? In terms of where they're at with tech and how they use it. The closest I had is an example of an aged care client and a large channel partner where what they did is they found that within that demographic, it was really difficult to get them engaged digitally with a solution like this at the start. And so what they actively did is they decided to bring in groups of the senior citizens within the aged care facility into a one-to-many training room, right? And there was a commercial aspect to this, of course, but they brought them in as a group and they simplified down the basics and walked them through examples of how people were trying to attack them and why they were trying to attack them. So that's a way in which you might extend to start to think about ways in which you could, if you're in a health organization, if you're in aged care, if you're in any industry that connects to those, one-to-many groups, enablement facilitation sessions are incredibly powerful. Keep it simple, super simple, keep it light. And then again, maybe you do that once a month, you have a different theme, right? So that's what I've seen. Any thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I think you're actually right on the money there, Frank. I don't have anything much to add.
Now we've only got a couple of minutes left in the session, but we've had a lot of questions. We're going to keep moving through them. But if your question has been answered, then the CodeBlue team will get back to you directly as well and answer your questions via email or via the phone. So if we don't answer them in this session, then please don't despair. All right, Maria, again, I think keeping Windows, Mac updated, does that affect how likely someone is to get caught in a scam? Maybe we can do rapid fire answers.
Yeah, I mean, best practices is basically keep everything updated. Sometimes there could actually be links that exploit a specific vulnerability in an application or an operating system, which is why patching is really important.
Cool. Next question from Amanda: is opening an attachment in an email just as dangerous as a link?
Do you want to take that, Frank?
Yes, it can be. Absolutely. Yes. That's the short answer.
Great. Love the rapid fire. What are the common ways attackers use to bypass 2FA?
Yeah, so this is going to be like a long answer, like if you want to get to the technical bits, but in a simplistic way, it is actually called as man in the middle or adversary in the middle attack. So when you're actually entering your credentials into a Microsoft or looking Microsoft, what the attackers will actually do is they will actually act as the middleman and then converse with Microsoft via APIs to get you the things that you would normally see, including MFA challenge. So when the cycle is actually complete, what they're actually left with is, in technical terms, it's actually called as the token. And the token is essentially the keys to the kingdom, aka your account. So that's the way that attackers are actually using to bypass 2FA.
Matt, one really quick non-technical answer.
Yep.
You click a link on an email, you shouldn't have clicked the link. That opens a page that looks like a Microsoft login page. It's not a Microsoft login page. It looks like a Microsoft login page. When you go to enter your credentials, it then sends off and asks for the MFA code. Because it's not the Microsoft page, they now inject code to grab the token. They've got that secret passcode. Now they're in. Okay, that's
easy.
There's many ways. Keep going, George.
This is a great question. I wish I had seen this sooner. Emma asked, how do we encourage staff engagement in mandatory cyber safety training without using incentives?
So I can actually take it. So I think Frank kind of touched on this one. Executive backing is the single most important thing if you really want to have a really good cybersecurity training. One of the ways that we have actually implemented cybersecurity training in CodeBlue is, again, one of the best practices is, you let the platform do the job, but to a certain point, and each organization to its own. One of the things that we have actually kind of done is we actually let it run for 9 months to actually see if there is behavioral change. And because we're all technical people, I asked everyone within the organization, how about name and shame? And everyone voted for name and shame. So, when we actually have our monthly national meeting, I put the name up of everyone that's actually kind of failed. Again, no shame in it. We know that everyone kind of fails. But again, the journey that you you can't just do it on day one. You need to actually have a journey that is actually built, and you need to have executive backing for it as well. And it is actually going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on each organization.
Okay. Beth asks, what can we do next if a bad link or attachment was opened? Great question. Frank, do you want to field this one?
Immediately report it to the IT team. Immediately. Stop, do nothing else, shut down, report to the IT team. That's it. Don't overthink it. Whoever your internal IT is, they'll take it from there, whether it's external, internal, etc.
Yeah, I'll just add one small thing. Just make sure that you also have some kind of detection and response mechanism, because usually when a bad link or attachment is actually open, a couple of things actually happen. There could be like an account takeover. You don't want to happen that. You don't want that to happen. If that happens, you need a mechanism to capture it and respond.
Great question. Great response. Emma asks, you said IT is perceived more like a policing unit than a supportive safety team. How do we shift that perception so staff see IT as a protective partner rather than an enforcer?
It starts from the moment you choose to socialize this kind of program from the executives, not from the IT. So don't think, hey, we're going to get this training program in and send out simulations and not tell people that they're going to get them. Tell them that they're going to get them. Socialize it. Explain that it's a program. Tell them that it's okay to fail. Make that open, public, and have it socialized by people that are non-IT. That's executive driven. That's HR, learning and development. These are the key people that are all about building the culture of your organization. It makes a huge difference. And like Matt said, if you're putting up a board of people that got something wrong, it's not about the shame that they've got that wrong. It's like we just did it live on a call. We went through those simulations, and some people got them wrong. That's the problem with human error that I dislike. We call it human error, but we're being tricked and trapped. It's not that we made an error. We shouldn't have to really worry or be concerned with these sorts of problems, right? If this is not our day job. So that will work. That will shift that perception.
I know we're a few minutes over, which is cool, but we've only got a few questions left, so we'll continue on. And thanks everyone who's still sticking around. Next question is there an attack that starts without any user actions? And also, what to check if we suspect an attack has started? Good question. Matt?
Yeah, so there are attacks that actually starts without any user actions. These are usually with ransomware gangs. They actively attack an organization, try to find holes in your infrastructure and try to punch those holes and get through. So that is the normal thing that I've actually observed. And I think what to do if you suspect, report it to your IT team. That's the single most thing.
Okay, why is it that attackers get the spelling wrong? I guess in the domain name or the from address, when they should get it right to be convincing. Good question.
Well, it could be framed in two different ways. So they might be talking about the spelling within the content of the email. And if that's the case, it means it's a largely automated program done by people where English is not their first language, if that's the language they're going after, and they're not yet that sophisticated. That's dramatically changing though, because large language models are again taking us from the top of the pyramid to sophistication and scale. If it's in the domain name, it's because the attacker doesn't have the right to actually, own that core domain name, which is why they're intentionally misspelling it. But just in a small way with whatever domain name they can secure. A domain name is just like your residential address in English, right? So whatever your residential address is, you give that to people to know how they get to your house. It's the same thing we put in to know how to get to a certain website. That'd be the main reasons why.
A lot of them actually using different languages and alphabets within, on the keyboard to fake letters too. So instead of the Latin O, it's a Cyrillic O. It looks exactly the same, but they're actually very different. And they're registering domains like that too, which is pretty nasty. Another question, how do you detect a scam in Facebook organizations selling products? How to recognize? I guess this is, I guess what you mean is on Facebook Marketplace. How do you detect scams, people selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace? How do you recognize the scam? Do either of you want to have a crack at answering that question? I guess the same could apply to eBay. Same could apply to dodgy e-commerce sites.
The usual answer is if it is too good to be true. usually with Facebook marketplaces or any other online stuff. Yeah, question it.
All the in the good training curriculums that I've seen, they have these core principles that they teach you around. Even if it's not the Facebook marketplace, let's say you're trying to download an app on the iPhone or the Android, and you're trying to determine, is that app safe or is it not safe? Look at the reviews, look at how many people have reviewed it, look at the reputation of whoever the seller is. Check like it's all these core basic things that it teaches you to check. That's not a guarantee that it's not a scam, but it goes a long way to helping you identify the obvious ones.
Just on that one as well, really quickly, there was a scam that was actually running both on TradeMe and Facebook Marketplace almost like 6 months ago. I don't know if it is actually still active, but basically they would actually put an ad of a car that they want to sell. In the process, one of the things they would actually ask is, I want to do like a WOF, and I want to be done by this specific person. Now, the WOF itself is actually not going to be that expensive, which is $30 or something. But if enough people actually go through that link and complete it and make the payment, just $30, and it soon adds up, because the number of people that is actually requesting for WOF is
Good point. Okay, last question, unless others want to submit theirs before we finish up. What's the monthly cost from Victor? I guess, Victor, maybe you guys will want to have their own answer, but the quickest way to find out specifically for you is to click that button in the video or at the top of the screen. And also the team at CodeBlue can get in touch. But Frank, Matt, did you want to add to that?
I'm good.
Agree with you, George.
Cool. And one that's just come through from John. Not a question, but it might be worth highlighting that AI is being used to generate authentic-looking shop websites that appear to be from this country but aren't. Yeah, true. Sometimes scams, sometimes just low quality. Yeah, great.
That is actually a very, very good point. One of the things, if you're a B2C or online presence shops, if you care about your brand reputation, it's actually a thing that's actually happening. Just make sure that you have technologies that is able to scan and then show you that, hey, there is somebody else that's actually cloning your website. You might actually be losing a lot of revenue by people just going to that website as well.
Another one from Frank that's come in. 2 Franks. We've seen a few instances of DNS spoofing attacks lately when our users browse the web, especially small businesses that have cheap templates built websites with poor security. Have you seen any of these types of attacks with your clients? Matthew?
I haven't seen DNS spoofing attacks at our customer base, to be honest.
So I've been exposed to this a little bit, and from one Frank to another Frank, the reality is security. Think of security awareness training as a layer. The space in which that addresses those types of attacks is what we would call edge security. Effectively, okay, the user. So if we think about the journey, somehow it's gone from an email, perhaps, or it's gone from a web search, one of those two things, and the user's clicked a link. And the email security system, which is hopefully good, hasn't quite managed to detect it. Now we've got the human layer, and the human layer is kicked in place, and hopefully the human can identify a problem and spot something dangerous. But now the human layer hasn't worked. There's now another layer that sits after that, and we call that edge security, which sits across the web browser. No matter which web browser you open up and what happens, what it's doing is doing the coding inspection, looking up doing the DNS security, protecting against the large language model attacks, avoiding prompt injection, protecting against dangerous extensions, etc. And it's doing that across any browser. And that's called edge security, which means it can follow your staff wherever they are. So ultimately, that's probably the layer that would deal with that type of attack. But this is why it's important to have like the core fundamental layers in place to help protect you.
Great response.
Hey, one small thing to add, with poorly built security ones, what we've actually kind of observed from our security operations is there is a attack which is actually called ClickFix. So if you want to know about that one, just Google it up, what ClickFix is. But in simple terms, if you have got really bad security for your website, the attackers are able to kind of compromise it. And then to anyone that's actually visiting the website, they'll actually throw a CAPTCHA challenge like the Cloudflare would. But what the CAPTCHA is a social engineering thing where essentially it will guide the user to run a command on their website on their endpoint to take over their laptop or endpoint, right? But yeah, look up ClickFix attacks.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Okay, we're through our questions for now. What we might do is just wrap up. As I said before, guys, we'd love your feedback. If you click the link to ask for a demo, there's actually a feedback form. Please send that through. We'd love to hear from you. And also love to give you a demo of what some of these sort of bleeding edge AI-powered security awareness training products look like. And as I said before, 3 lucky people will get a $100 Prezi gift card, which can't hurt either. Matt, would you mind going to the next slide on your deck? Last thing we just wanted to finish up with was, I guess, to connect with Frank and Matt on LinkedIn. You can use the QR codes there, or you can just use the search field at the top of LinkedIn like we all do. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks for being a part of the session. Really appreciated you coming along, and all the very best.
Thank you all.